So just to echo what Kathy, Miss Francis said, we specifically refer to this as a workshop. It's not a training session. And the reason why we like to use the word workshop is because we really want it to be as interactive as possible. We really want to use the time that we have together now for you guys to ask as many questions as possible. And as Kathy rightly pointed out, the chat function is there. So we would definitely encourage you to pop questions or anything that you like on there. And there will also be opportunities for you to get involved. So if you want to say something, raise your hand, and Kush and I very much would love to invite you to share your feelings with us. So Kathy, I'm going to ask you to go to the next slide for me. So in terms of workshops, so today's session is all going to be around social media and e-safety, and we're going to be thinking a little bit about the aims for today. But as Cassie also rightly pointed out, our next session, which is next Tuesday, is going to be focusing around strategies and interventions to support well-being. But before we get started, it's been 3 sessions that we've been together, so hopefully you're more familiar with me. But I really wanted to take the time out to also introduce my colleague, so that she can share a little bit about who she is and some of her background. Kush?
Thanks, Amal. Hi everyone, good evening. So my name's Kush, and I'm also an educational psychologist at Hammersmith and Fulham. Amal kindly invited me along today, the main reason being I have a bit of a special interest in social media and the kind of potential impacts it might be having on children and young people. It's a very fast evolving field, so technology is changing faster than we think we can keep up, but we're trying. So it raises real concerns, but there's lots of opportunities as well. So hopefully we can talk you through some of those today. And yeah, just give you some sound bites you can take away and hopefully use with your children and young people.
Right. Thanks, Kush. So, as we always do before we get started, we want to really take the moment to stop for a second and really think about how we're doing today. And so what I would love for you to all do is either by raising your hand or putting in the chat box, just take a second to reflect on how you're feeling in this very moment. So you might be feeling great and really excited about, either today's workshop or something lovely might have happened today, or you might be feeling pretty good or doing okay. But also knowing that it's okay if you're feeling like you could be better, or that you might be struggling, or that you might need support. So I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds just for you to take it in and then share with us how you're feeling before we get started. I can see lots of typing, so that's really promising. Okay, Nadia said a bit tired, but okay. I think I echo that. I think I'm definitely feeling a little bit tired after a Monday afternoon. Somebody said pretty good. Thank you, Chris, for sharing that. Okay. Lots of typing as well. Hope that it could be better. Okay. Pretty good as well. Great, thank you. Lovely. So there's definitely a mixed range, and that's absolutely okay. And I think what Kush and I really wanted to do in this moment is to almost say it's okay if you're struggling or if it could have been better. And it's great if you're feeling good or okay or feeling great. It's so lovely for us to hear, just to do a quick check-in before we get started. Okay, so we're going to move on to the aims of today. So Kathy, clicking on. Perfect. So hopefully what the plan for this afternoon is for us to really think about what is social media. And as Kush has already said, it's such a broad topic, and we're hoping to just understand that a little bit by the end of today. We really want to start exploring some of those relationships between social media and things like sleep, body image, around bullying, and what social media is like for children with special educational needs. We're going to talk about screen time. I know that's a big thing for parents. And hopefully, we're going to think about what you should know about screen time. Or what does the research tell us? What kind of things should we know as parents about screen time? We're going to introduce you also to something called the Digital 5 a Day. So we're going to explore that a little bit with you. We're going to think about how we can build resilience and literacy when it comes to social media in children and young people. But most importantly, what we want to end with today's session is some top tips for you and your young people to really, put into practice when you think about social media. So without further ado, we're going to skip on. And as I said, please, continue to write in the chat box. I will definitely monitor it. Raise your hand, and then we'll be able to bring you into the conversation as well.
Okay, so we thought we'd do a bit of an activity to get us going, because there's a lot of kind of headlines out there, I suppose, about social media and technology. So we thought it might be a good time to do some myth busting, really. So Cassie, if you just put the first kind of quote. Yeah, there you go, thank you. Okay, so please use the chat function to write either true, false, or anything in between. This is our first statement. So heavy social media use is linked to poor sleep. So if you think that's true, you can type true. If you think it's false, please say false. And if you think sometimes, you can type sometimes.
So Daniela said true. Andrew said true. Nadia also said true. Somebody said very true.
Very true. Okay.
David says true.
Okay. Overwhelmingly, we've got people thinking it's true. Okay. It is in fact true. So we'll be talking about that a little bit more in a minute, but also thinking about why it's linked. So what is it about social media use or heavy social media use that contributes to poor sleep? I don't like to say, well done, you got it right, but you did all get it right.
Because we've got somebody who's got their hands up, so maybe would we like to invite them at this point just to see? Oh, can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm just going to see who's got their hand raised. Ali? Ali, would you like to unmute and just share with us some comments or reflections?
Yeah, regarding the poor sleep for the social media, it's really true. It's really true. Even for myself, if I use not only for the kids, it's gonna make me not sleep for 3-4 hours staying on the bed. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing. I think that's really, yeah, really strong of you to put yourself out there and actually say that this is how it affects your sleep, because I think that's true for all of us, or most of us here today. It's definitely true for me, that my own social media use at nighttime affects my sleep. So today we'll be thinking about what that might be like for young people and adolescents, really, who are going through such a critical kind of development time, and how it might be affecting them. So thank you for that. Okay, next quote. Okay, so this is another one that sometimes comes in the news headlines. Social media causes body dissatisfaction. What do we think?
I wonder, Kush, whether we can just explain what we mean by body dissatisfaction.
Yeah, I suppose making someone feel unhappy with the way that they look to themselves when they look in the mirror. So that can be related to body image, not feeling good enough, feeling that something's wrong with you compared to other people.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got mixed. Okay, some people said true. Some people say it may contribute to that at times. And then some people said not sure. Faye said it affects her eyes. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking part and responding to that one. So this one's an interesting one, and I'd say it's not proven to be true yet. So lots of research into the area, but no proven link that social media causes body dissatisfaction. But the key word there is cause, and there are links. So there's kind of correlations, which we'll come to in a minute.
Great.
So I hope that gives you some information for now, but we'll be exploring that further. Cassie, next one. Thank you. Okay, cyberbullying through social media is a national problem in England. What do we think? I'm just wondering if anyone here has experienced cyberbullying as well. I'm just being a bit mindful of that when we're talking about it today.
It's interesting. So Daniela said, I don't really know. I don't really.
Maybes.
Moses said, in some countries, it's a national problem. And Nadia said, across all countries as well.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for your responses. So with this one, obviously trends change over time, so we have to keep tracking what's happening year on year for which age groups, because it does differ depending on which age group we're looking at. But at the moment, it is true that cyberbullying through social media in particular is becoming a bit more of a national problem. So it's something to be quite wary of. It's where it's happening, what it is, and how we can help young people that might be going through something like that. Okay, so we'll come to that in a minute in terms of more information, but true. Okay, the fourth one. So young people with special educational needs, we've abbreviated it there, are more vulnerable online than their peers. SEN stands for special educational needs.
Good question, Moses.
Yeah. So just to give an idea, special educational needs is a huge broad range, but it could be, you know, a child or a young person has a diagnosis, so autism, ADHD, but it could also be kind of broader needs which link to the curriculum. So maybe literacy difficulties or maths specific difficulties, which identify them as SEN, maybe difficulties with communication.
We've got another range as well. So some people saying that it can be true, and some people said, Moses said, I haven't come across that, but it is a possibility.
Okay, thank you for that. We want to make sure that everyone's included, whoever comes along today. So if your child does fall within this category, I suppose this is definitely relevant for you. But yeah, there is a link. So research in the UK has shown that young people with special educational needs are more vulnerable online than their peers who perhaps don't have those needs. Okay, so we'll come to that again in a minute. And final one, I think this might resonate with a lot of parents here today, but fifth one, true or false, technology creates social isolation.
Oh, Moses was right in there. They said no straight away. I don't agree, okay? Chris said very true. Lots of truths, and Nadia said it depends on the use.
Oh, Nadia, you could do this presentation for us. That's our key message today. It depends on the use, depends on what they're doing. 100% agree. Great. Okay, thank you. So with this one, it's not proven to be true. So it has not yet been proven that children and young people are more isolated because of technology. But there is some information around what they're doing online, which might contribute to feelings of loneliness or isolation, which we'll come on to later in the slideshow. Okay, thank you for that. Thanks for taking part, everyone. I think it's really important just to kind of reflect on these kind of key headlines that might already be in our mind from what we're seeing in the news and the media ourselves, and then really tease apart what each one really means, which is what we're going to be doing now. So I'm just going to start off Oh, sorry, Amal, I can see people have commented in the chat. Did you want to?
Yes, so some people are saying they're just having a conversation about technology, and definitely this is great conversation to be having. And as Kush said, we'll be coming back to it. And some people said that it can help with those who have verbal communication problems. So Alexa, I'm really glad you said that, because actually that's an area that both Kush and I are very much interested in, and we're going to very much come back to that. And Moses said that technology can be a force of good as well. And I think that's what we really want to hold on to today. Where are the opportunities and where social media could really support, you know, young people, not just in their education, but their social communication and their friendships as well. Okay.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so let's start off then with what is social media, because it is very broad and it is constantly changing. So I think it's good just to have a shared understanding of what we mean by social media. So at the moment within the UK, it can be defined as websites and applications that enable users to create and share content or to participate in social networking. Okay, so it's a bit complicated when we read it as a definition like that. But really, what I think we need to understand is that nowadays, with the kind of evolutions in technology, research does say that owning a smartphone is almost synonymous with social media. So if your child or young person has a smartphone, through the range of apps that they're using, it's likely, very likely, that they're already accessing social media. So that's just something to reflect on in terms of at what age does a child have their own phone, at what age do you think you're comfortable with, you know, giving that responsibility over. There's no right or wrong answer, can I just say? I'm just putting some food for thought out there. In terms of what kind of social media children are most using, so YouTube and WhatsApp have remained the most popular apps over the past at least 4 years in the UK. I'm not sure if everyone here is aware that WhatsApp is a social media platform. It is. So it goes beyond just texting, and it does enter the definition of social media use. So in terms of the effects of social media, when we talk about what's the impact of social media on young people, we really are thinking about the broadest range possible. And in order to think about the effects, sometimes we look at individual apps and how they might be affecting a person. Part of the problem with kind of policies and laws not being in place to protect young people at the moment is around this difficulty with defining social media. So that's just something to think about. And just to kind of reflect on the age as well. So age restrictions, we would hope, you know, protect children and young people from harmful things or potentially harmful things. So we have them with kind of real life things. So, you know, if we're thinking about alcohol, cigarettes, things like that, there's age restrictions. Driving. So things, you know, driving gives them independence, great thing, but we have age restrictions for a reason. When it comes to technology and social media, we're still really behind with that. So even when there are age restrictions, so for example, with WhatsApp, the age restriction is actually 13 years old. The same for YouTube, 13 years old. But they're not being enforced in the way that really they should be. And I'm sure some of you might be thinking that, you know, YouTube does have a kind of kids version and there are lots of positive things about YouTube, but it's just something to bear in mind that in terms of protecting children and young people from online harms from social media, it is really that we're trying to, you know, figure our own way out with this at the moment because policy is really, really behind. Don't know if that surprises anyone.
Moses mentioned TikTok.
Yes, yeah, and unfortunately, it's, you know, we do rely on kind of trends coming up. So we start to see, you know, TikTok is one example, but there are a couple of other apps. So Musical.ly was around about 6 years ago, and these apps that encourage kind of, you know, dancing and showing whole bodies, unfortunately, then become kind of magnets for grooming and really unfortunate behaviour. So yeah, just something to hold in mind is age restrictions and social media being practically everything to do with smartphones. So they're not very different. Okay, so let's move on to thinking about the first quote, which was heavy social media use is linked to poor sleep. So we did say that that is true. But in terms of thinking about the impact, it's really important to kind of stop and think about research. So what does research tell us? Think about your anecdotes as well. So we've already had a parent share, you know, that it keeps them up. So then what might the impact be on their young person? But also really important to think about research and what does the majority of research tell us. So the first thing is that it does affect sleep because of blue light stimulation. So I'm sure a lot of you already know this, but on our phones or on most screens, there's something called blue light, which is sent out, and that kind of stimulates our brains, makes us feel quite alert, and leaves us feeling really energized, which is obviously not what we want at bedtime. So great at other times, not so great at bedtime. There is also some research that says actually checking your phone in the middle of the night is a lot worse than even just going to sleep with it. So once you've fallen asleep or once you put it away, it's even worse to then wake up and check it. That seems to do something as well in our minds. But it is more than just blue light, and I think that's something that we need to think about when it comes to young people and why they're using social media at nighttime and the effects that might have on their sleep. So some of the things to think about are what are the motivations for use at night? What are they seeking? Is it is it because they want to see what their friends are up to? Is it because they didn't get time to go on it earlier in the day, so they're now making up for it? Is it because they're feeling quite stimulated and actually haven't calmed down enough for bedtime already? So then the phone's an easy kind of distraction. It's entertainment. They can see their friends. They can see what celebrities are up to. So that's just something to think about as well, is aside from the actual technology and screen impact, what is it that they're seeking to do at that time on their phones? And that's really important because there is strong research suggestion that passive scrolling on your phone is significantly related to poor well-being compared to active participation. So if you're on your phone at night and you're talking to a friend, that's actually better for you than just scrolling on, for example, Instagram or TikTok. So that's just something to think about. And in terms of kind of supporting that, I suppose, what can we do to help? So sleep education, talking to young people and children about why sleep is important. Think about how it affects them the next day. Get them to think about what they can do to help themselves rather than telling them. We know that adolescents and teenagers don't like to just be told what to do, so include them in that conversation. And if it is that, you know, they're going on their phone because it's giving them something, then see if you can replace that something with something else. So for example, could we substitute being on your phone until you fall asleep or feel tired with, okay, be on your phone for 30 minutes, then we're going to put it away, and then maybe we'll read for 30 minutes or listen to some like music for 30 minutes, anything else really, but let them come up with the suggestions. And the other thing to think about, and I think a parent did write it in the group earlier, is that there are lots of positives when it comes to technology. I've had lots of children in my research tell me how they actually use apps on their phone to help them fall asleep. So there's relaxation apps that are available. There's apps that actually, if you have an Android phone, it actually puts your phone into grey mode and turns your internet off when it's your bedtime. It does that for you. It tells you when your bedtime is as well. So sometimes it's about trying to actually work with technology rather than against it. But yes, that's just some information on social media and sleep. I know it's a big problem and I know it's a worry. But just remember that, you know, teenage years are a time when they're kind of figuring out what works for them, and they need guidance at that time, but they need to be included in the conversation as well.
And I think I would just
add.
I was just going to say, Coach, just to add to that, I think one of the parents already raised it, I think Ali, that, you know, she found it really hard to get off her phone, and actually that affected her sleep. So I think when you are having conversations with young people about social media and sleep, just try to remember what that's like for you and how difficult that might be for you, because actually that could facilitate a more positive conversation between you two.
Yeah, thanks, Amal. Is there anyone that wanted to ask or say anything about sleep before we move on? Okay, there will be time for questions at the end.
Yeah. So we're going to think a little bit about social media now and body dissatisfaction. And really, why we wanted to talk about this is because this is a big area, particularly on apps like Instagram, where children and young people are constantly being exposed to images, and sometimes healthy images, sometimes not so healthy images. And bearing in mind that adolescence is such a key developmental period for psychoeducation. And if you remember back to our second session, we spoke a lot around this stage of development and young people really exploring their identity and pushing boundaries and really thinking about their self-concept. And because we know that, we really want to think about, well, what is the impact of social media on body dissatisfaction? And what we found actually was that what research says that girls report spending more time on social media than boys, and photo-based activities like Instagram. So if you remember thinking back just to what Kush said, scrolling through Instagram can be linked with negative thoughts about body image. So if you think about it, if you're constantly scrolling through Instagram and you're constantly being exposed to images of various different images of women, men, it doesn't matter who, and that can almost stop for a second to read, that could have a negative impact on how a young person sees themselves. There's a real strong message around the literature, that's research literature, that says that it's not about how much time you spend online, but actually what you're doing in that time. So as Kush has already mentioned, is that idea of passive versus active use. So are they just scrolling through and just being exposed to images of different bodies, or actually are they engaging and having conversations on social media? Additionally, research suggests that it's who we compare ourselves to is very key. And I think if we stop to think about that, I wonder if that surprises us or not. Because if we are comparing ourselves to, individuals like from Love Island, for example, because, it's a big popular show, and young people are watching things like Love Island, and that's the kind of people that they're following, and that's who they are comparing themselves to, compared to if they were comparing themselves to somebody else. So what we're essentially saying in this here, there is a link between social media and body dissatisfaction. But really what we want to think about as parents is, how are children and young people engaging with social media? How are they engaging with photo-based social media like Instagram? Are they using it passively, or are they active users? And body image is such an important part of self-esteem. If you really think about it, and think about just yourself, and I don't think this relates exclusively to young people, it relates to us as adults as well. How we see ourselves compared to others will have such a big impact on our self-esteem. And many studies have shown a correlation between self-esteem and body satisfaction. And actually, that we're still not sure what the relationship is, but I think it's really important for us to support young people to really be exposed to a variation of body types, firstly, but more importantly, to really support them to think about how they're using social media and how they're engaging with social media. Kush, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add about self-esteem, and body image is only one part of self-esteem, and that's something to really think about with your young person. And yeah, just really focus on kind of what are the other strengths, or what are the other things that we have going for us apart from our bodies. And yeah, really important to make sure that they're following kind of positive accounts as well. But do be on the lookout, just because we are talking about teenagers here, and we know they are a bit more vulnerable to kind of self-image at that age. So constantly being mindful of how much they're focusing on their bodies. But yeah, even if they're following positive images or positive kind of accounts that we have, it's if they're still focusing on the body image, it's just something to be wary of.
Absolutely. And I think the key message around here is, ultimately you guys are experts in your children and young people's lives. You will be the best placed to have conversations. And it's really important to have conversations about body dissatisfaction and how they see themselves and how that's linked to their self-esteem. Thanks, Kathy. Go to the next.
Okay, so we're going to think about cyberbullying now. And I know this is, increasingly a concern when it comes to young people socialising online. So cyberbullying is different to face-to-face victimisation or face-to-face bullying in a number of ways, which I'll go through in a minute. But the main thing to remember is that the outcomes are actually really similar. So in terms of, links with depression later in life, anxiety later in life, low life satisfaction later on, the outcomes are all said to be quite similar. So even though it feels different in the time, it's as important that we talk about it and we deal with it the same way that we would with face-to-face victimization. So cyberbullying, just to kind of give it a bit of a definition, it's the use of electronic communication or technology, which typically involves sending messages of an intimidating or threatening nature to another person, or obviously receiving it from another person. So that's roughly what the definition is. A lot of people define it quite differently. Again, this is why policy is quite behind, because we haven't quite got to a single definition that's considered universally. But yeah, making someone feel really rubbish on purpose online. It's different to traditional face-to-face victimization because it's harder to spot. So that's definitely true. It is harder to spot because it's not always on public display. So common tactics that are used for cyberbullying are posting mean comments, spreading rumours on social media, posting embarrassing photos or videos. And if you think about some of these things, they're not always, it's really hard sometimes to think about, was that intentional, was it not? But, if it hurts someone, it hurts someone, and that's something that we all need to teach young people to be mindful of. There are other things, it's something called doxing, when you share private data like addresses or phone numbers on purpose, belonging to someone else. Posting hate speech is actually a form of cyberbullying as well. That can be related to race, religion, sexual orientation. You might not name the person even, and this is where cyberbullying is really different to face-to-face victimization. But if someone's in your social digital world and you're making hate comments, and that can be taken as cyberbullying as well. It's sometimes a lot more kind of toned down as well. So, for example, on WhatsApp, which we've said and discussed is a form of social media, intentionally leaving someone out of a group can be taken as cyberbullying as well, because it's unkind, isn't it? If you imagine that behaviour on a playground, it would be unkind if you had a group of friends and you're intentionally leaving someone else out. Very complex and a lot to unpick there. But the main thing is that technology allows you to be anonymous. It allows to give up accountability. You can create fake profiles really easily. And abuse is not always verbal. So you can actually, bully someone non-verbally by posting pictures and memes and the rest of it. So in terms of the differences, what we really, really need to do is think about opening up that conversation with young people. So instead of kind of labeling something as cyberbullying and asking them about that in particular, it's good just to kind of remember that communication is key, and just asking, has anything upset you on social media, or how have you felt today? What did you look at today? What's your favourite thing that you saw today? What was your least favourite thing that you saw today? Things like that can be quite helpful. It's really important as well to have a grip, and I know this is hard with teenagers, but just to try and roughly know who their social circle is, because there is a relationship between online bullying and offline bullying. So if your child or young person is or has been victimized in the past offline, there is a slightly increased chance that could happen online as well. It's not very nice reasons, but it's just because of ease of victimization. If it's happened offline, it's easier to do it online, and other not very nice reasons, but just something to think about, that if your child has been exposed to that offline, they could be more vulnerable online. So just bear that in mind in terms of looking out for them. And yes, just in terms of where and how it mostly occurs, it's useful to know because you know where to kind of, you know, have your eye. Like we said, smartphones are synonymous with social media. It's practically the same thing. And unfortunately, cyberbullying is mostly happening entirely, I think it was 97% or something last time I checked, on social media. So a broad range of social media, but social media nonetheless. So it's just something to think about as well, is that if they have a phone, yeah, it could be happening. So just keep those conversations going and try and think about what social groups they have. That can be a really protective factor. Yeah. Any questions about that one? We will do some signposting at the end as well, by the way, just to mention in terms of, you know, if any of these issues are coming up for you or have come up for you, where we can kind of go for support, what might be the next steps. Okay. So social media and special educational needs and disability, so that's what SEND stands for. We just wanted to include this because we do work with special educational needs children as educational psychologists as well. It's a big part of our role. And we're aware that some parents here might have children who identify with that group. So yeah, just a bit on technology and special educational needs. So there is some relation between offline vulnerabilities and online forums. So that's for lots of reasons, but usually research has shown that it's down to difficulties with communication and interaction. So social communication difficulties, kind of sometimes, you know, having a bit of social anxiety as well from those difficulties can create problems online. It's also suggested that some groups of special educational needs don't always have the skills to kind of manage their time online yet, and that's something they might need a bit more support with. So not being able to manage time online can also contribute to kind of problematic behaviours. And again, in this field, the reason that we're kind of shining a spotlight on it is Amal and I have both been looking at this in our research, but policy is really behind in protecting these groups. So it's really important that communities are talking with each other and kind of sharing information to help protect them while policy catches up. So just as an example, gaming disorder, so excessive gaming, has been linked with groups who identify with ADHD or autism. And it was only in January 2018 that gaming disorder actually became, you know, identified as something that needs help. So yeah, that's just a bit of an indication, 2018. However, there is really strong suggestion that pupils with special educational needs can perhaps benefit more from technology and online communication than their peers. Lots of reasons for this, but the main reason is that technology lets you communicate in so many different wonderful ways. You know, we can send a voice note to someone, we can FaceTime someone, we can share images of what we're up to if we don't feel like talking that day. So yeah, it's perhaps it gives a lot more kind of I don't know, tools, I guess, than just verbal communication. But yeah, so it's important not to kind of limit access, but just to kind of bear in mind what the risks might be, but also what the opportunities might be. And in terms of social media and special educational needs, there is just to note that there is limited research in the area, and most of it has been conducted with children who go to special schools rather than mainstream schools. So yeah, we're still working with that. Amal, did you want to share something here as well?
Yeah, I just was gonna bring some of the key points that I emerged from my own research. So I looked at the lived experiences of young autistic people from BAME communities, so from Black, Asian, ethnic minority community, and social media really came up. And you know, I reflected on whether I was surprised by it, and actually, in some sense, I wasn't, because actually, what my participants in my research said that they actually really favoured social media, particularly for making friends. And one of the main reasons that they gave is quite often children with autism can struggle with social communication. And what social media platforms like Instagram and WhatsApp, what it allows them to do is almost give them a chance to collect their thoughts before they respond to a conversation. And then some of the difficulties that they find, like sensory or like visual cues or facial cues, that's almost been stripped back because they're using their phone to have a conversation. So it almost feels less pressure for them when they're interacting with peers. And what they found was that they experienced more success with friends through social media. And I think that's really important for us to hold that in mind. Yes, there are negative sides to social media, but young people are saying, particularly young people with special educational needs, that it does allow them greater opportunities to have friends, and it's more likely for them to feel success in having peer relationship and interaction. And I just wanted to really highlight that. Okay, so we're going to go to the next slide. We wanted to share this particular poster. So this poster was put together by UCL, the University College London. And what they basically done was they put a rough guide to social media for parents of teenagers with autism. So you can always remove the word with autism or the phrase with autism, because actually what we want to express is that the advice that's actually shared here is good advice for all children and young people. It's good advice for parents to be aware. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to circulate this to everybody that's attended, because I think it's really nice short advice that they give on tips on how you can really support your young person to really engage with social media in a positive way. So before we move on to the next part of the training and start thinking about screen time, I just wanted to pause at this point and just invite anybody that had any questions or reflections or any comments that you might have had up to this point. So definitely remember you can raise your hand as well, and we love to hear some of your feedback so far.
I think we're okay at the moment, Amal, maybe okay. Towards the end.
Great. So we're going to think a little bit now around social media and screen time. And I guess one of the things we really wanted to emphasize was about that it's less about screen time and much more about online activity. So the phrase that we keep using is, are children and young people and teenagers being passive on social media, or are they actually being active users? And as teenagers who are using computers and smartphones, at times they might look like they've been socially isolated, but more often than not, young people are using these kind of devices like Instagram and their phones to overcome social isolation. And I think that really goes back to what I was saying about my own research, that actually young people were purposefully using social media and using, their phones in order to connect with their peers, because they weren't able to do that physically. And devices like the phone via social media allows them to do that, and they're more likely to experience that success that we were talking about. I guess as parents, what we really want to be thinking about is what is the motivation for using the screen time? What is the purpose for young people being on there? And I think a top tip for parents is really tracking what they're watching and really thinking about, okay, are they being active users? Are they being exposed to positive images we were talking about? Because actually active users correlates with positive mental health and vice versa. And we spoke a lot about, because she's already mentioned the blue lights as well. So we need to be thinking about when children and young people are being exposed to screen time, actually how much of that blue light filter is on, how much of that they're being exposed to. And I guess the key message here is it's not necessarily about the screen time, but actually really thinking about how they're engaging with what they're on. So they could be on the screen, on the phone for 5 hours, but they could be talking to friends, they could be making plans, they could be really supporting each other. Or they could be on the screen for 5 hours and they're passively just scrolling through Instagram or other photo-based websites and actually not engaging. So I guess for us, what's really important is for us to really monitor the time that they spend doing the activities. And a top tip is co-creating boundaries with your children and young people. So really sitting down with them and having a conversation about actually how often are we going to be on social media? When is that? What does that look like? And allow them to be part of that conversation. I think you're more likely to be effective if almost those rules and those boundary settings come from them. And what we really want to do is really for you to communicate with young people that the reason why you're talking with them about screen time is because of safety. And I think that's really important for you to share with young people. Kush, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because I've seen Chris has mentioned in the comments about possible kind of addiction to social media, and children, young people spending hours purposelessly on social media. So thanks for raising that, Chris. And I think when it comes to screen time, that is the biggest concern, isn't it? That it's purposeless. They're wasting their time. They're wasting their lives. They're feeling rubbish at the end of it. They're always moody at the end of it. So what have they actually done online? The answer is a lot more complicated than that. So the first thing is that we do not yet recognise social media addiction. So if we're saying someone's addicted to it, is what I think what you're trying to describe there is maybe that they're spending more time than they need to, and the behaviour is turning problematic. So I think the first thing would be to try and help your young person see that for themselves, but without it coming from you as a rule, because we know that teenagers will rebel, we know adolescents will rebel, and we know that no one likes to be told what to do, especially if they have something that they feel is working for them. So in order to break a negative cycle, you really want to kind of break down how much time are they spending online. So get them to, on their phones, perhaps track how much time they're spending on each app. So you can have that. You have that feature, on Apple and Android phones, where they will tell you a breakdown of how much time you spent within 24 hours on particular apps. So get them to do that. It might open up a conversation. From that, you can have the conversation of what did that do for you? How did that feel for you? What were you mostly doing? How did you feel after doing that? Open up that conversation, because if they're doing something, it's for a reason, and we all do something for a reason, even if it is that you feel the behaviour is turning a bit addictive. What purpose is it serving? And that's something to unpick with them. So I'm happy to pick that up with you at the end, Chris, but I do understand it's a very real problem about too much screen time.
And I guess I would like to refer you back to our first session when we spoke about the iceberg. The iceberg almost essentially would be really helpful here. And one of the key messages we had was about being a detective. And I think it's very much the same. So the screen time and the behavior is what you're seeing. But what we're trying to say is actually what's happening for that young person underneath. And exactly what Kush said, what purpose is it serving, that behavior that you see? And that's really time for us to be the detective and unpick that with young people.
Sorry, just to add as well, Amal, is I have seen, or it's come up quite a bit in research as well, that it's when someone's on their screen, it feels very rude. And we say, put that away and talk to us, we're here. But actually, they're probably talking to someone else on their phone. So for them, it doesn't feel like they're not talking to someone. And we know that teenagers like to spend more time. They start to tear away from the family a little bit and start to go towards their friends a bit more to share their thoughts and feelings. So just being mindful about how we have those conversations. It's important to have them, but just thinking about how.
Absolutely. So I'm just conscious of the time. So what we're probably going to do is we're going to try and go through it a little bit quicker, because we don't want to keep you much longer than we have to. But essentially, one of the things we wanted to share with you was this Instagram post that was done by CAM, so the Children and Adolescent Mental Health Service. And what they basically did was they put together 6 ways in which Instagram, or it doesn't have to be Instagram, it could be any photo-based app, for example, and how it can negatively impact your mental health. We've kind of touched on some of these already, so we're not going to go too much into detail, but things like self-esteem and comparing yourself because you're constantly being exposed to different images. It impacts on sleep patterns, cyberbullying, which Kush has already mentioned, and this FOMO. So if you might or might not be familiar with this abbreviation of FOMO, but it's this fear of missing out, which is basically a form of anxiety where young people don't want to put their phone down because they don't want to miss out on their friends who are going out, or their friends are doing something. They always constantly want to be in the know. And I think as parents, that's really important for you to be aware of some of the impact. And I would actually go beyond and say that this is not just limited to young people. This can also apply up to us as well as adults. If we're constantly engaging with things like Instagram and other photo-based apps, this could also be very much talking to us. And Cassie, if you just click on, yeah. So what we've basically done is we've put together a list of sites that your young people and yourself can follow. These are all different sites around for CAMHS, young people, Childline, positive, BBC positive, body positive. And we would actually encourage you to follow these, because I think it's quite nice for young people and yourself to be receiving positive messages about social media. And we want you guys to be able to engage and learn. And these sites are really amazing for following, because they're constantly updating us about research, constantly sharing us ways in which we can shut off from social media. They constantly give tips as well in terms of how, if social media is affecting your sleep, what kind of things that you can be doing. So we would very much encourage you to follow those if you have Instagram, or I think Twitter as well. Okay, so we'll go on to the next slide. So this is something we wanted to spend some time to go through, but we're not going to get a chance to. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to send the link out to everybody. And the idea is this Digital 5 a Day is an evidence-based way in which you can support young people to almost engage with social media in a really positive way. So that link will definitely come through. And now we're going to think a little bit about digital literacy.
I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to speak a little bit faster than maybe I have been. But those kind of accounts that we encourage you to follow if you use Instagram or Twitter is because they don't just tell you really negative things about social media. They actually post things which help educate us about social media, if that makes sense, and how we can use it positively in our lives rather than negatively. And one of the things that does is something called build digital literacy. So literacy is obviously how we read, write, spell, communicate with each other in kind of written or verbal forms. And the idea of digital literacy is that we need to do the same for our minds about technology and the digital world. So we need to educate ourselves the same way as we would to read, write, spell around like our digital world, if that makes sense. So technically it's defined as the ability to use information and communication technologies to find, evaluate, create and communicate information, but critically as well. So trying to encourage young people to be critically reflective of what they're doing online and take some responsibility and accountability for that. And the key message with building digital literacy is that building your self-esteem, your confidence, your belief in yourself, your kind of organizational skills are all going to be helpful in your digital lives as well as your offline lives. And moderate digital technology use is not harmful. It really, it can be really beneficial. And it can, obviously, we've seen in the past year and a half with lockdown and COVID and the impact it's had, how what an advantage it is to live in a connected world. So that really is the key message. And just to say about, in order to kind of develop those skills, communication really is key. We say it a lot as educational psychologists, but opening up those conversations is really, really important. So just to move on to top tips then. Okay, so the first thing is keep calm and do your research. Okay, so filtering and surveillance are not the best ways to protect children and young people. If we hear kind of like quite scary messages about particular apps or social media in general, the first thing to do is kind of keep calm and think about, what are the chances of this affecting my young person? Do they use this? How do they use this? What safety features are there that they can put in place to protect themselves on the particular app that they're on? And yeah, just do your research. So those kind of accounts that we gave you are quite good starting points, but also do speak to your schools and see if they have any information on particular apps if you're concerned. The second thing is communication is key. So conversation starters like, show me your favourite Instagrammer, show me your favourite TikToker. You know, you can slyly have a look at what they're kind of up to, and also what it might be, you know, giving them, what following that person or looking at those type of videos gives them. You can also try the tell me, so, oh, tell me how that makes you feel, or, you know, tell me what that makes you want to do. If they're looking at particular dances or someone baking or something. And really that is about empowering them to think about why are they making those choices online. And the third one, really important, so this was part of one of the digital fibre days, which we'll send you, but it's really about taking action environment. So really making sure they know what and where the report and block functions are on each app they're on. They're usually quite consistent, and they are getting better slowly but surely. So really making sure, do you know how to report? Or, oh, ask them, like, you know, trick them a little bit. Oh, I saw this, it wasn't very nice. Do you know how I report this? Get them to show you, maybe, in a way of kind of, you know, checking that they know themselves. And teaching about consent, really important, because we know about you know, teenage years and kind of pushing the boundaries, risk taking, all parts of, you know, development. But with the digital world, we know that once things are out there, they're impossible, almost impossible to get back. So really teaching them about consent, and the idea that once a photo is on the internet, it's very difficult to then take it back off, and having those conversations.
Right, thanks, Kish. And number 4 is all about peer pressure. One of the things that we really want to communicate here is, again, it's so important to be having conversations with young people about peer pressure. And sit down with them, you know, really support them to talk about peer pressure, because actually peer pressure could really be impacting on how they're engaging with social media. They might only be joining certain, you know, social media sites because of their friends and not necessarily because they want to. And I think it's so important that we're able to have those conversations with young people and empower them as well to be able to actually say no if that's they don't want to engage or be active in a particular app. Number 5 is around signposting to support. And I think this is a message that we try to really convey in the first training workshop and the second workshop, was that sometimes as parents, we might not be the most appropriate person to support a young person. And that's okay. You know, if there is an older sibling, an older cousin, you know, they might be in a better position to be able to have those conversations. And actually your role then becomes about getting your oldest child to have a conversation with your youngest child about social media and being safe on social media. Because you look like you're going to say something.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, it could be the cool aunt or the hip uncle as well. There's someone sometimes it's not the parent. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, and that's a reality. And I think we picked that up in the first workshop and the second workshop, that actually sometimes the best way you can support your young people, is almost to invite an older sibling or invite an auntie or a cousin, and let them have that conversation. And then the final thing was about family habits. You know, what we mean by family habit is for you as a family to decide on how you will manage social media in your household. For you guys to have habits. You know, does everybody turn off their phone at 9 o'clock and there's no more social media? Whatever it is, I would almost invite everybody to sit down as a family and decide what those habits are going to be. Co-create that together with your kids and then follow it through. And that's a really nice way of empowering young people as well, because they can see that you're modeling for them, and they're more likely to follow that through. Okay, so we're very conscious of the time, but we want to open the floor to any questions that you might have. Fish and I will stick around now, but we appreciate that some people might need to rush off for various reasons, and that's absolutely okay. So remember, this training is being recorded, so any questions that's asked now, any advice or recommendation that we give, will be available on the website, so you can have a look at it. But we want to say thank you so much for taking the time to attend.
Yeah, thank you everyone.
Absolutely. And if there's any questions, feel free to shout them out.
I just wanted to say thank you so much to Amal and Kush for their time today as well. And also, if you have a moment, parents, please fill out the evaluation form for today's session. So it really helps us to inform what you would like to know more about for the next session, and what we can do to help you further. And if you would like us to contact you with any specific concerns about your individual child or young person, we can do that on a one-to-one basis. But please do feel free to put any questions in the chat now, and these will be forwarded to Amal and Kush, and we can follow up with you about those.
Great. Lots of thank yous here, which is so lovely to see.
Brilliant.
And some people saying that it's been brilliant. So that's great feedback for us. So thank you for sharing that.
So please feel free to stay on now. If you'd like to carry on the conversation or ask any questions, you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, please do fill out the evaluation form, and you are welcome to leave.
I definitely heard that one, Kush.
You hear the plane? Sorry.
Ah, sorry, let me check that form for you. It should be okay. It says anyone can respond. Try now, it should be okay.
Acqua. Hai ancora scariche? Hai ancora scariche? Quante?
Allora, sai che no, però...
Hai preso un altro...
Oh, sorry about that. I'm not sure why it's not.
I can access the second link, Essie. So the second link sent was working for
Oh,
me.
right, okay. Try that one then, please, everyone. The one I've just sent just now, I'll send it again. Please try that one. That should work for you. Ah, thank you.
Social
Brilliant.
media.
No, questo.
Perfect.
Great.
Questo?
I tried to do something
una zuppa,
technological
credo.
clever and it
Che ha
didn't quite
fatto
work.
papà, sì.
Okay.
So there's a question.
Amal, shall I?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, off you go.
I was just going to say, Andrew's asked a question. Shall I take it?
Yeah.
Please.
No
Okay.
problem.
Andrew, are you okay with us answering this to the group? Because I'm aware there's quite a few people still on, but you've not mentioned names, so I'm hoping it's okay.
Non ho capito. Questo.
Oh,
We
someone's
might
not.
just mute everybody. Shall
Yeah,
we like
okay.
mute? But just, well, Lewis, are you able to mute everybody? Great.
I can.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, off you go.
Okay. Okay, I think the noise has stopped. Okay, so just about post-screen anger. Child is a big online gamer. Can get quite angry when we ask him to stop or follow through on taking his device away if he doesn't come off when agreed. Yeah, it is quite. It can be common. Wondered about research. Yeah. I think so. Like we say, gaming, kind of extreme problematic like gaming, is now recognised as something that can be diagnosed. Not saying that that's what this child, needs or falls within, but just to put it out there that it is an increasing concern. I think the main thing to think about is. Is the anger only when it comes here? So I know Amal's going to be thinking about well-being and general kind of. Is that right, Amal? You're thinking about that next session? Yeah. So that might be quite helpful in terms of general managing that kind of sense of well-being and trying to maintain that. In terms of the device, I'm just wondering, are they? Is it a he? Yeah. Is he talking to friends as he games? So is he gaming with friends in real life that he knows? So that's the first thing to think about, because that's supposed to be a lot better, apparently, according to research, than gaming with strangers or people that you don't know. So firstly, try and differentiate between that. If we're happy that he's gaming mostly with people that he knows, or maybe consistent people that he's gamed with for a long time, it then might be about thinking about putting some boundaries on that he's okay with. So can he come up with the boundaries as to when he's going to game? Let him lead that at the beginning, and then obviously you can work with him as you get on. I don't know if that answers your question. I know it's very broad, but I'm just looking at when we ask him to stop or follow through and taking away, it doesn't come off. So perhaps if he sets the boundaries, he's got more chance of success in terms of following through. And just to bear in mind as well, Andrew, that time goes very differently when you're gaming compared to when you're not gaming. It flies. I game myself, so I know an hour to the person who's waiting for you to get off can feel like a long time, but when you're gaming, sometimes you've only done one thing that you're trying to do. So it's possibly about helping him maybe see that time next to his screen. You get sound times that might help, maybe setting an alarm on the phone that might help. He does often play with friends. It's quite important during lockdown. Yeah, that's what we mean. So if he's gaming with his actual friends and he's talking to them at the same time, you know, perhaps that's because he's not had that in the past year as much. School's been inconsistent sometimes in terms of being able to be open for everyone. So yeah, it's just thinking about what the behaviour might be leading. I hope that's a little bit helpful, but yeah, definitely put some boundaries in place. Help him put them in place. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. Thank you, Moses, as well.
Got Angelo with his hand up, please.
Yes, hi. I'm Angelo's dad here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Thank you. Carry on.
Okay. I mean, for me, it is a bit, you know, like the internet is quite essential these days, and especially when there is a lockdown. I mean, nowadays, you cannot separate, you know, the usefulness and the entertainment because they're using the screen. Once they're using the screen, you cannot separate or, you know, tell the kids, do your homework now or play games now. And they're becoming like addicted to screen. And the hardest bit I have is to make my kids get involved in manual stuff, nothing related to digital. Uh, Whatever it is, I don't see my kids doing manual homework at all, and or painting or even physical activity. They just use the screen, whether it's gaming or homework. I mean, I come from a different, you know, education background, but now I think when they have these two things, entertainment and studying uh, online, it just becomes normal. Then they get addicted to screen. So how can the school help kids have more, uh, you know, homeworks, you know, manual homeworks, like more on paper, pen on paper? I don't see my kids holding a pen or a paper at home. I don't see them reading books they're supposed to. They keep telling us, "Oh, we're reading enough off the screen," but that's not the way. I need to see my kids buying books, reading books.
I can help answer that a little bit. In sense that the school's policy, yeah, I agree with you, is majority of homework and classwork follow-up revision is done on the screen. It is done online these days. And I think that is just the nature, I guess, of education these days and the way studying goes in schools, colleges, universities across the land. Everything is done online now. And, you know, whether we like it or not, I think that is a system that most institutions do move towards now. And we do encourage, I mean, reading is a homework that we expect, whether that be, again, reading on a Kindle or an audio book or a physical copy of a book. Reading is a homework that is expected every week, every 2 weeks, as part of their English homework. But certainly a majority of the other subjects, science, maths, you know, history, geography, all of those other subjects will set their homework online. So I agree there is a difficulty there where you're trying to get them off the screens when actually a lot of the things they need to do are on the screen. So that's really, really tricky.
And
So go on.
And things can be mixed up. I tell my child to go and do his homework because he has a homework on screen. I try to surprise him, or try to, just hop in to see if he's doing his homework or he's playing. I can't tell. If he's not around me, I cannot tell if my child. All I see after half an hour, he comes, Daddy, I finished my homework, or in 10 minutes, I finished my homework. But
yeah, I mean, we have a homework portal called Show My Homework where parents have a login. So you should have a login to that portal, and you should be able to see exactly what tasks he's been set, how long those tasks should take him, when he's completed them, how long he's spending on them. And we do encourage parents to log in to Show My Homework to check that themselves, because you can access it from your own side and see what
yes,
they're doing.
yes. And my point is, I cannot tell if my boy is having at the same time another website open while he's doing his homework. If he is shuffling between two things.
Between the screens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I just keep surprising him.
Yeah.
And,
He's flicking on and
this
off
is
the homework
this is
onto
I'm being
Facebook,
very
onto homework.
transparent. I'm being very honest about it. That this is a challenge for parents. I used to do my homework on a pen and paper. My parents used to see me sitting down and doing it. Now I don't know if my boy is spending full half an hour doing his homework, or he is shifting between two things.
Yeah, that's difficult. If they're switching screens between things, that is a tricky one. Have you got any advice, Kush or Amal?
I was just going to say, you're reminding me of my studying days, because I used to do that myself. When you're sitting in a lecture and flicking between Facebook and the actual lecturer. I understand what you're saying. I think I don't know what the kind of school specific way of setting homework is, but if there's some opportunities for you to perhaps sit with him when he's doing some homework, not all of it. I understand if it's really long, but if it says suggested time 10 minutes, perhaps for that 10 minutes you can actually sit with him. Might give you some kind of sense of comfort that he's spent 10 good minutes on the task. The other thing I would say is that if he is completing the work, perhaps if he's getting a bit distracted along the way, I just don't know. As long as he's completing the homework and school have not got any concerns about the quality of homework, I don't know. I'm just speaking very broadly and very generally here, but I'm just wondering if it's problematic. And the last thing I would say is that remember what we said about particular phones and particular technology letting you see how much time is spent on certain apps. So that is something that you can do. So go and have a look at how long they're spending on particular things. If it's on a web browser, you've got the history function you can have a look at, and that gives you times that they access certain websites as well. So you'll be able to see what he had open simultaneously. Now, remember we said surveillance and monitoring is not the way forward only, but it's just something, if you're very, very concerned, that is something that you could do.
And I guess I would just add to I think one of the things that we always say as psychologists is to name things. So what we mean by that is for you just to name the fact that you think that potentially while he's doing his work, he might be on other social media sites. And actually just having that conversation and saying, I've noticed, yes, you're doing your work, but you seem distracted. Are you engaging and are you on other sites? And then opening that door allows you to have a conversation and maybe decide on creating some boundaries and how that will be managed. I'm not saying that, they might never go on their Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, but actually if they are doing their work, maybe taking a break. So every 10 minutes that they do a piece of work, maybe they might get 2 minutes on TikTok or they might get 2 minutes on Instagram. And at least then you're monitoring that as well, but you're agreeing that together.
Great. Thank you so much, Amal. It's really great advice. I'm going to have to wrap this up because I'm being kicked out of the school by the caretaker. So I'm going to have to go. He's banging on the door. But thank you, everyone, for attending. And as I say, there's a next workshop is Tuesday, the 4th of May, and we really, really look forward to seeing you there. If you've got any feedback, you're welcome to email me, and I can pass those on, and we can follow up with more conversations about this in the coming weeks. But I really appreciate your time, Kush and Amal. Thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who's attended today.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Night.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.